It seems as if, following his October 2018 appointment to the Supreme Court, just about every time this guy shows up in the news headlines, it's because of something bad related to the potentially inappropriate way he was awarded a lifetime seat in the highest court in the land. We all remember the histrionics during the final stage of his confirmation, when, seemingly panicked he might not get through after all, he turned to a bit of an unhinged comedy drama act in which, if he wasn't telling us that he loves beer, he kept mentioning the nicknames of his childhood friends as if this would somehow endear us to his cause. Current news reveals the FBI ignored thousands of complaints during their investigatory vetting process, although the main reason appears to be that the White House, then led by the Orange Gangster, intent upon getting him through no matter what, basically buried the evidence. A proper birth time would obviously give me a much better sense of this guy's planet cycle situation, but even with just the day positions, we can glean some potential insights about his present and upcoming situations. Negative rumors earlier this year came as a result of Saturn transiting over his Venus, and by May it was over his Mercury. Now, since it will station near 7 degrees, it is back over Venus again, meaning he is likely to get heat until at least November, with October being a particularly tough month. However, since Jupiter is also stationed over his Sun at the same time, it would be very unlikely for any of this to get him in serious trouble, even with a Jupiter at birth that squares that very Sun and Mercury. Going into next year, however, the situation is more complicated because Jupiter isn't going to be helping much, while Saturn is going over his Sun degrees, and with a June station in the 25th degree, meaning Brett is going to be uncomfortable from about April right through to August or September. There is a pretty good chance he is born early in the day of his birth, so that his moon would be in early Cancer, which would explain the 2-degree station Saturn made in September of 2018 in Capricorn, opposing that moon and giving him some serious heartburn around that time. So we'll have to see what the 2022 Saturn energy over his Sun brings, but if it's anything like the way it was treating his moon, this guy is in for a bit of a ride. His birth Saturn most likely trines that moon, and though it does oppose Pluto and Uranus, this may not be enough to make it a super dangerous planet in transit. Nevertheless, Saturn is always difficult in challenging transits, conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. It's just that in Brett's case, it may not rise to the level of correlating with a big disaster. The same isn't true for Neptune, however, because at birth, Neptune squares his Sun and Mercury, which on the one hand tells us why he loves beer so much, and why he was reputedly a major alcohol abuser in his college days, but on the other, that Neptune transits become threatening, since it will carry that square energy into the transit fray, and there we see that during 2023 and 2024, it will be opposing his natal Mars, which could prove extremely problematic. And if two upcoming big and difficult transits were not alarming enough, the 84-year cycle of Uranus offers no comfort, since already by this year and right through to the early months of 2025, Uranus is going to be squaring his Aquarius planets, Venus and Mercury during the early part of that, and the Sun in the later stages, and this transit, just like Saturn next year, harasses the most challenging planet pattern in his chart, namely the T-square that is formed by Neptune, Jupiter, and Sun, and it does this for a good long while. All of this has to be labeled somewhat speculative due to the absence of a birth time to better gauge the assets and liabilities, but let's just say this guy most likely has not heard the end of it for quite some time to come, even if, to be honest, I would be quite surprised, though in a very happy way, to see him kicked off the court, which I feel he would richly deserve, since with that Jupiter square to his Aquarius planets at birth, he comes off as arrogant, entitled, and dishonest, which are hardly good qualities in a Supreme Court justice, especially with a lifetime appointment. The problem as I see it is that the USA Supreme Court is a rather archaic institution from which only once a justice has ever been impeached and removed. I'm guessing that finding misbehavior smoke around Brett, would be relatively easy, but fire or solid proof of behavior bad enough to warrant impeachment and removal could be a bit of an insurmountable task given the very divided political years we are currently traversing.